Unlock divine guidance. A powerful morning prayer for grace wisdom that transforms lives. The sky was draped in a thick fog, shrouding the small town of Millbrook in an eerie silence. On the outskirts, whispers traveled fast through the streets, sparking a frenzy of curiosity. People had started to claim they received divine visions after performing an old morning prayer, a seemingly simple act that held the power to change lives. Those who recited the words started seeing colors of vibrant spectrum glowing in their everyday lives. Mysteries unveiled in the mundane. Gardens bloomed with extraordinary flowers, and the distant laughter of children intertwined with haunting echoes of unknown voices. Could this truly be the awakening they'd all been longing for? As 6 a.m. approached, a peculiar energy filled the air. The church bell tolled hollowly, sending chills through the spine of anyone within earshot. Inside, a gathered crowd stood wide-eyed, holding hands, their hearts racing with anticipation. Flashes of emotion crossed faces: fear, hope, a longing for something greater than themselves. They felt it, an unexplainable tension crackling like static electricity. Margaret, a local, had been drawn in by tales of this transforming prayer. Just last week, her wilted tomato plants returned to life overnight, vibrant and full of promise. Many gasped at the thought. What else could it do? But just as the prayer rolled off the tongues of the hopeful, the temperature dropped sharply. A cold gust curled around the church, extinguishing candles and snuffing out hopes in an instant. Eyes darted nervously as a shadow flickered at the back door. "Did you see that?" someone whispered, their voice barely audible. Murmurs grew, thickening the air with palpable dread. What was happening? Was it still divine guidance, or something else? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air bristled with uncertainty, curiosity taut like a tightrope. Just as someone stepped forward towards the door, the ground shook violently, sending the congregation sprawling. Gasps erupted, followed by harsh whispers of dread. "What is happening?" Margaret exclaimed, the lump in her throat swallowing her words. And just like that, in the swirling chaos, a single voice cut through the uproar, a calm but ominous warning. "They are coming for you." The weight of those words echoed harshly amidst the frantic clash of the uncertain crowd, leaving them hanging, trembling, caught between clarity and fear. What did it mean? Who were they? A question lingered, pulling the audience deeper into a storm of unanswered mysteries. The panic rippled through the room like a shockwave. Eyes darted from one face to another, searching for reassurance in the chaos. Margaret felt her heart thumping like a drum, drowning out all other sounds. "We need to leave," someone shouted, their voice cutting through the tension. The congregation surged toward the exits, the overwhelming fear propelling them forward. But the doors wouldn't budge. Hands gripped the handles, pulling and pushing, but it was as if an unseen force held them fast. Breathless and disoriented, they turned back to the center of the church where the shadow loomed larger. It flickered, morphing with the swirling fog that crept through the windows, and for a brief moment, a silhouette took form, a figure cloaked in darkness, with eyes that glinted like shards of ice. "Stay," it whispered, each sound heavy with sorrow. The gathered crowd froze mid-escape, fear and fascination rooting them in place. Margaret felt a tingle run down her spine. She wanted to scream, to break free from this nightmare, but curiosity clung to her like spider silk. "What do you want?" a brave voice shouted from the back. Though the tremor in it betrayed their bravado, the figure took a step closer, and the air thickened. "You called upon the divine. Now you will know the cost." A collective gasp resonated from the group. Murmurs broke out, questions spilling like marbles across the floor. The divine? Was this what they had asked for? Was this power worth the price? Margaret's mind raced, thoughts jumbled. She had envisioned enlightenment, clarity, perhaps a path to a better life. But this felt like a dark omen. The figure extended an arm, palm outward, a pulse of cold energy reverberating through the room. Not all that glows is to be embraced. Shadows allow no light without a toll. What toll? Margaret's own voice burst forth, shaking with defiance. The figure turned its focus on her, and for a moment, she felt exposed. Each vision you have received, each color you see, it has drawn you closer to the unknown. But soon, you will be asked to choose sacrifice for enlightenment, or retreat into your ordinary lives, leaving behind the magic you sought. Gasps filled the room, understanding dawning like a chilling sunrise. The vibrant visions had a cost. Fear swept through like wildfire. Furtive glances exchanged among the crowd, weighing their yearning for higher existence against the chilling reality presented. Will you embrace who you might become? The figure pressed, a question anchoring itself in the hearts of many. Faces paled, Margaret's chest tightened further, burdened by the weight of the choice. The church seemed to pulse, the walls tightening around them, as if the very structure wanted to know their answer. Her mind swirled. She could already see it, the beauty of blooming gardens, the laughter of children uncorrupted by the weight of the world. But what lay beyond that? What shadows lurked behind the colors they so desperately chased? The figure lingered silent, expectant, watching, waiting. With trembling hands, Margaret finally found her voice, armed with uncertainty. What if we refuse? A sinister smile crept across the figure's face, revealing a glimpse of something far darker. Then the vibrancy will fade. You will be left with the mundane forever. A collective murmur surged again. Eyes flickered in fear, secrets hung in the air. Choose wisely, the figure warned, its voice slicing through the tension. For they are coming for you, but the path you take is yours to forge. And there in that moment, a ripple of tension coiled tighter, the congregation caught on the precipice of the unknown. Who would choose the vibrancy of chaos, and who would turn away? Something crawled at the back of her mind, whispers of those who had already succumbed. Were they truly ready for the journey ahead, or was this just the beginning of something unimaginable? As Margaret looked around at her fellow townsfolk, dread settled deep in her stomach. The choice was imminent, but what lay ahead could change everything or destroy them all. Outside, the fog thickened, bulging with an energy that felt almost alive. What awaited beyond the church doors? And who would be waiting for them? The air crackled with tension, thick enough to slice through. Eyes locked on the cloaked figure as fear interwove with a desperate need for answers. Margaret stood at the center, feeling every heartbeat reverberate like a distant drum echoing in her ears. A shudder coursed through her. She was painfully aware that this moment was about more than just them. It was about their very existence. Your visions, what do they truly mean? Someone whispered from the back, breaking the suffocating silence. The weight behind those words hung in the air, heavy with the promise of revelation. The figure tilted its head, and the room chilled at the sudden intensity of its gaze. You see colors because you have glimpsed possibility. Beauty resides in the vision, but it comes with darkness. It paused, narrowing its icy eyes. The choice you face is not merely a leap into enlightenment. It is an acceptance of sacrifice. Margaret felt her stomach twist. The thought curled around her, clenching tighter as each second ticked by. They had all sought a path lit by these vibrant visions, but now they stood on the edge of a precipice, shadows lurking below. What kind of sacrifice? The question slipped from her lips before she could stop it. In that moment, she realized the truth. They stood on the brink of the unknown, terrified yet yearning for that which lay just beyond their grasp. Your fears, your comforts, perhaps those around you, the figure replied, voice low and silky. What do you cherish? What would you part with to reach the extraordinary? A murmur rippled through the crowd, growing louder as whispers of personal losses surfaced. Some faces turned pale, reflecting the reality that their desires might require pain. Margaret glanced around at her friends and neighbors. Each had their own battle scars, each a story that told of everything they had sacrificed already. Choose, the figure urged. Align with your true desires or retreat to a life untouched by the divine. But be aware the cost is steep. To gain colors is to lose pieces of your soul. A chill rushed through the room like absence of light as Margaret's mind raced. She thought of her children, the laughter that filled her home, the friends she'd known forever. The thought of losing any of them sparked a fierce denial deep within her. No, She cried. We can't, you can, and you will. Each path has its shadows, the figure intoned, its voice echoing hauntingly, and those who stand still invite madness. Panic threaded through the congregation again as hearts raced and breaths quickened. Some inched backward while others stood firm, caught in the throes of decision. Small bursts of hope flickered between them, the idea that their shared connections, the ties of kin and friendship, could perhaps weave them together through the darkness. Then the windows rattled with a powerful gust of wind, stirring the fog inside the church. The temperature dropped, and Margaret could see her breath come out in shaky puffs. She could feel the weight of eyes, not just the townsfolk's, but something unseen yet palpable in the shadows. Are we ready? Someone asked, strained yet hopeful. Can we do this together? The figure stepped closer, the shadow swallowing its form. Only if you trust in one another, only if your hearts remain intertwined in this journey. Margaret reached for the hands of those next to her. A sense of togetherness swam through her veins, urging her to step into the unknown. But deep down, the question still gnawed at her. What if their dreams demanded an impossible price? The flickering intensity behind the figure's eyes told her they were already being watched by forces beyond human reckoning. And just as she was about to voice her fears, the floor shook violently, sending panic through the crowd. The light dimmed, and shadows flared up like wildfires at the edge of their reality. Then it spoke again, louder than before. What will you sacrifice when the darkness comes for you? With that, the fog twisted ominously. The doors creaked as the walls shivered with expectation, a new terror rising. The congregation stood frozen, movement paralyzed, caught in a web of fear and anticipation. Margaret's heart thundered against her ribcage. The choice loomed above them. But shadows weren't the only thing invading their sanctuary. Those lurking outside, the ones they had stumbled into, were watching and waiting. And soon, they'd have to confront the true nature of their desires. What awaited them once they stepped out of the church? Would the cost of their choices claim more than they could fathom? The tremors beneath their feet escalated, shaking the very foundations of reality. Margaret clutched the hands of those nearest to her, their faces strained with fear as they exchanged frantic glances. The cloaked figure loomed like a dark sentinel amidst it all, its presence a forbidding reminder of the precipice upon which they stood. Maggie, whispered a voice in the grasp of a quivering breath. It was Lily, her childhood friend, eyes wide with unshed tears. What do we do? Margaret felt the weight of the question, an echo of every heart in the room. Suddenly, the shadows stretched, dark tendrils edging closer, wrapping around their legs, tugging as if to pull them into an uncertain abyss. The cloaked figure's gaze pierced through the haze, fixing on her with a cold, predatory intensity. Will you dare, or will you remain a prisoner of your fears? It asked, a whisper like ice against her skin. The congregation gasped, a ripple of shock coursing through them. The wooden pews creaked, an anxious moan. As the winds howled outside, they felt the thrum of uncertainty swell in their chests. Margaret's mind raced, piecing together each crumb of knowledge. What visions had they all seen? The bright hues of hope smattered against the mundane existence they lived. But what if the colors were mere illusions, tricks to lure them into decision under false pretenses? The light brings warmth, she finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. But what if it burns? What if the sacrifice is too high? The cloaked figure remained silent, its form a jagged silhouette against the pulsing shadows. Eyes darted to one another, the fear replaced by dread, as if the weight of Margaret's words had forged a bond forged in invisible chains. Suddenly, a loud crash resonated from the back of the church. The heavy doors burst open, revealing a swirling maelstrom of darkness just outside. Faces twisted in horror as a figure emerged, cloaked in shadows, its form indistinguishable from the void beyond. Margaret, it called, in a voice that sent ice slithering down her spine. You've been chosen. Chosen? She echoed incredulously. For what? To be prey? No. The figure stepped forward, its eyes glowing like embers in the night. To wield the power of sacrifice. It is not merely loss, but gain in another form. A collective murmur rippled through the congregation, each face betraying their deepest longing and greatest fear. Margaret's jaw tightened. If we make this choice, it could unravel everything. The newcomer sidled into the light, casting an otherworldly glow over the room. Do you fear darkness more than you desire the vibrant life that awaits? It challenged, pushing every individual to confront their inner turmoil. Voices erupted, some sobbing, others yelling indignantly. This isn't what I wanted. Someone cried. This is madness. The cloaked figure, however, was undeterred. We all chase beauty, but beauty shines brightest at the cost of shadows. What choice loomed before them now? Daughter or dreams? Friendships or freedom? With each moment passing, the fog encroaching around them thickened, and a collective sense of urgency enveloped the air, suffocating their thoughts. Margaret felt her grip slacken as terror surged within her. We need to choose, she shouted over the chaos, firm yet quivering. Together or apart, live or let die. But as she called out, a flicker of light caught her attention. A large window shattered instantaneously, the fragmented glass raining down like falling stars. An unseen force surged through the opening, sweeping past her, drawing her mind away from the others. Margaret! Lily screeched, scrambling forward, hands reaching desperately amidst the chaos. The world warped around her, blurring the boundaries of reality. A rush of wind howled through the shattered window. Margaret's heart raced as she felt the pull of something powerful, almost magnetic. Was this what awaited her outside? The promised enlightenment mingled with the terror of sacrifice, and she suddenly understood. Outside those doors lay the darkest shadows, indeed welcoming. Shadows, but also the brightest, uncharted potential. Are you ready to embrace the unfathomable cost? The cloaked figure called, both an invitation and a warning. Margaret's breath quickened, each second expanding like a thunderous drumbeat. The congregation held the air thick with expectation, their fate intertwined in this moment. What awaited beyond the threshold? Would they step through the narrow door into a realm where dreams and nightmares collide? Or would they remain trapped within their fears, paralyzed by indecision? As shadows danced at their feet, only one truth remained. The moment to act was upon them. They had to make their choice, and it might just define their very souls. The heavy air pulsed with uncertainty, each heartbeat echoing through the anxious crowd as Margaret faced the dark void that framed their only escape. The shadows around her twisted and swirled like a relentless storm, eager to consume them whole. Her skin prickled with the chilling realization. Every soul in that church was at risk, caught between the undeniable allure of power and the horror of what it might demand. Margaret! Lily's frantic voice cut through the haze, like a lifeline thrown from a sinking ship. Please, we can't just stand here forever. Lily's plea resonated deeply within her, igniting a fire against the encroaching fear. Would it truly be so dreadful to leap into the unknown? After a brief moment of self-doubt, Margaret shook her head as if ridding herself of the darkness that clouded her judgment. There's no turning back from this, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Amid the chaos, the cloaked figure stepped closer, its presence intoxicating. You seek the power of choice, yet with it comes a staggering weight, a tremendous price. Margaret couldn't see any clarity in the figure's face, but she felt its scrutiny. The intensity of its gaze bore into her, sifting through her thoughts, her fears, and her desires. Life had never been as simple as right or wrong. Choices created paths, choices created futures. What could possibly be waiting outside? She turned to her friends, panic flaring in their terrified eyes. Each face was a mirror of her own struggles, a blend of yearning and fear. We need to decide. Together. We can't let fear dictate our choices. With newfound determination, she stepped closer to the edge of the shattered window. The howling wind wrapped around her, welcoming and fierce. What are we afraid of? The darkness outside, or the darkness within? The shadows began to recede at her words, offering a glimmer of light that flickered in the dark. Margaret reached out her hand, inviting them to step forward. If there's beauty on the other side of sacrifice, we owe it to ourselves to find out. Whispers ignited around the room, some hostile, others intrigued, as if the congregation was wrestling with the weight of her call. Suddenly, a low rumble cascaded through the floor, shaking the ground beneath them. The wooden pews creaked ominously, and the cloaked figure's voice rose, almost drowning out the fears that hung in the air. You think you can embrace the unknown without understanding the cost? It is a tempting trap. The warning sent a shiver down Margaret's spine. She swallowed hard, the lump in her throat threatening to dissolve her resolve. Yet still, she felt an unseen force urging her forward. The cost? I'm ready. But was she really? A flicker of doubt flashed in her mind, stoking the flames of fear in her heart. What if embracing the darker path led them astray? What if the sacrifice was more dire than they imagined? Lily stepped beside her, squeezing her hand tightly. We do this together, Maggie. No one is alone in this. Tension rippled through the group, a moment suspended on the brink of change. Yet just as the first rays of determination gathered to pierce the shadows, a deafening crack echoed through the air. The very walls of the church seemed to tremble as lightning fractured the sky outside, illuminating the swirling mass of darkness. With a sudden burst of energy, the cloaked figure shouted over the chaos. Beneath every choice lies a consequence. Are you ready to welcome what may come? The congregation held its breath, teetering between desperation and resolve. In this moment, the choice wasn't just about their present, but the very essence of who they were. Were they willing to embrace what lay beyond, understanding the storm they could unleash? As the sky roared, Margaret stepped closer to the fragmented window, her heart racing. She felt the pull of destiny coiling around her like a serpent, tightening. Would they leap into the chaos and discover the truth? Or be swallowed whole by the shadows that lingered just beyond their reach? The challenge pulsed in the air, and as Margaret's next words hung there, thick with anticipation, she knew one thing. The moment for action was ripe, and they were about to uncover the darkest corners of their own hearts, a truth neither she nor anyone else was prepared for. Margaret felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her, a living thing, pushing her closer to the unknown. The cloaked figure seemed to grow larger beneath the crackling sky, its shadows stretching like dark fingers across the church floor. She glanced back at the faces of her friends Lily, with terror stinging her eyes, James, frozen in disbelief, and Sarah, visibly shaking, clutching her Bible as if it could shield her from the impending doom. Wait. James finally found his voice, cutting through the tension like a knife. What if this is a mistake? What if we don't really know what is out there? Lily shot him a look, her grip on Margaret's hand tightening. We can't fear it forever. If we don't choose, we're already lost. The cloaked figure tilted its head, its hood shifting slightly, revealing nothing but shadows. You could forsake the magnificence that lies in the search for truth, it warned, echoing across the trembling walls. Or you may embrace a destiny unfathomable to your minds. Choose wisely. The words echoed ominously in the still air, vibrating in Margaret's bones. Torn between fear of the darkness and the hope of liberation, she took a deep breath, letting the chill of the wind fill her lungs. Her heart raced with an unfamiliar thrill. She had never felt so alive, so close to something monumental. This is our moment, she declared, willing her voice to be steady. We choose to leap. With those words, she stepped forward, her foot breaking the fragile boundary that separated them from the abyss. The moment her foot touched the edge, the very essence of the church shifted. A gust of wind wrapped around her, wild and consuming, pulling at her clothes and hair. She felt the pulse of the crowd behind her, a wave of mixed emotions crashing against her resolve. Margaret, no? Sarah shouted, but the words barely pierced the tempest. It felt as if the very heavens were opening, as the light from the storm outside poured in like a torrent of possibility. The vibrant energy crackled, alive and electric, filling the air with the scent of rain and ozone. As she stepped into the gap, it was as if time slowed to a crawl. The church shrank behind her, no longer solid walls, but fading echoes of whispered doubts and fears. The darkness ahead swirled, shifting in a mesmerizing dance. She was on the cusp of something unbelievable, something that could shatter them or set them free. In that instant, she looked back, frantic eyes meeting hers, panic mixed with resolve. Together, Lily yelled, urging the others forward. Margaret could feel their spirits wrestling with the choice, their hearts pounding as furiously as her own. Then, as they collectively edged closer to the precipice, a terrifying roar erupted from the void, a sound that transcended everything. It was as if the universe itself was warning them. Reality cracked and flickered around them, threatening to rip apart under the strain of their decision. With a last surge of adrenaline, Margaret called out, "If we face whatever comes, we can't back down now." A collective gasp rippled through the congregation, and one by one, they took those final steps. The dread coiled in her stomach as they plunged into the thick shadow, the world itself seeming to crumble behind them. But as they fell into darkness, something shifted. The air grew warmer. Echoing laughter danced at the edge of her awareness, promising either salvation or damnation. The dance of shadows coalesced, forming shapes that weren't quite human, eyes glinting like stars. They were not alone at that moment. Margaret realized with piercing clarity. The danger did not lie solely in what they might encounter, it was within them, buried beneath layers of choice and consequence. The bonds of their friendship hung delicately in the balance, ready to snap on the brink of revelation. What awaited them in that abyss? What horrors and wonders would they uncover? As the darkness enveloped them completely, a single question rang out in her mind. Would they emerge as heroes or be forever lost to the shadows of their own decisions? The answer to that awaited them in the heart of the unknown, the core of their own making. The world twisted around them, a vortex of shadows swallowing their screams. The darkness crushed in from all sides, but Margaret felt a flicker of heat, a distant fire burning just beyond reach. Her heart pounded, every beat echoing through the void, reminding her she was still alive, still fighting. As the chaotic energy settled, they found themselves standing on an uneven ground that pulsed beneath their feet. An iridescent glow flickered at the edges of their surroundings, giving form to the swirling darkness. Margaret squinted, her senses clawing for reality. Was it the remnants of the church, or was this a new world entirely? "Is everyone okay?" James asked, his voice tense, almost reverent. "Yeah, we're here," Lily replied, keeping close to Margaret, whose heart raced, a frantic rhythm of uncertainty. "But where? Where are we?" The shapes from the shadows began to take form, ethereal figures with elongated limbs and glowing eyes that shimmered like gemstones. They circled the group, their laughter resonating like distant chimes, echoing in the intimate space that felt both terrifying and magically vibrant. "Souls of the Seekers," came a melodic voice from among them. It was a being, tall and willowy, draped in light that refracted through the darkness, casting rainbows on their faces. "Welcome to the realm of choices. Here, truths become visceral, realizations are transformed, and choices bear consequences." Margaret held her breath, feeling an electric charge pass through the group. She could sense the others leaning closer, thoughts swirling in their minds. "Choose wisely," she murmured, recalling the cloaked figure's earlier warning. "What does that mean? What are we supposed to do?" The radiant figure smiled, its eyes filled with ancient wisdom. "You must confront what you truly fear. The shadows carry both light and darkness. Release your truth, and the path will reveal itself." Just like that, uncertainty turned to dread. Their eyes flitted across each other, the opaque weight of their unspoken fears nipping at their resolve. They weren't just facing an external darkness. They were faced with the darkness within themselves, the doubts that had lurked for so long. "What if we can't face it?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. She stepped back involuntarily, the fright pulling her away from the group. "No," Margaret asserted, donning a mask of bravery. "We can't split apart, not now." The beings tightened their circle, shimmering closer, their glowing eyes widening with anticipation. Each silhouette seemed to amplify the emotional tempest raging inside her and her friends. Bound together by courage yet stretched with unacknowledged fear, they stood ready for something monumental. What if James started, hesitating as he met their expectant faces? What if we face our fears together? What if we reveal our truths right now, with strength? Then we'll unlock the door to what lies ahead, Lily replied, determination flooding her tone. She lifted her chin as if she had caught a glimmer of hope through the haze. The shadows twitched in response, urging them to take the plunge. Margaret felt the gravitational pull of collective bravery simmering just beneath the surface. They could face this together or be dismantled by it. "Let us do it," she proclaimed. "Let us confront the very things that bind us." One by one, they shared their fears, laying them bare like skin ripped open, each truth a thread woven into the fabric of their shared reality. The darkness around them vibrated, responding to their words with a low hum like rolling thunder, But as they continued, echoes of laughter twisted with their confessions. Not all laughter is joyous. Some carried a sour bite, and it slithered into the group's hearts, sowing seeds of doubt. What if they were simply feeding the shadows? As their revelations reached a fever pitch, the air grew thick, and the shadows roared once more, a sound that threatened to consume them all. Margaret's pulse quickened. Were they prepared for the consequences of their truths? Would their confessions free them, or drag them deeper into despair? The vibrant beings swirled into a tempest, pulling them in different directions, their ethereal laughter mingling with the chaos surrounding them, morphing into a sinister melody. Would they withstand the storm, or would they shatter against the force of their own realizations? A hot spot of uncertainty surged within her. She glanced at her friends, who were now locked in their battle against the shadows. What awaited them next? Would they discover the true power of their truths, or would they succumb to the darkness howling around them? The answers lingered in the depths of the shadowed abyss, and their journey had only just begun. The storm intensified, shadows snarling around them like wild beasts hungry for flesh. Margaret's heart raced. She gripped Lily's hand tightly, as if that connection alone would anchor them in this swirling chaos. James and Sarah fought their own battles against the encroaching darkness, fear battling with a flicker of bravery. "Stay together," Margaret yelled, her voice barely piercing the cacophony of anguished whispers and mocking laughter. Then, suddenly, the radiant beings surged forward, their forms intertwining with the malevolent energies around them. A brilliant flash illuminated their faces, reflecting a range of emotions: hope, fear, uncertainty. The shadows roared, a guttural sound filled with rage and despair. It felt alive, sensing their vulnerability. "Do not mistake your truths for weakness," the melodic being spoke again, its voice now firm and urgent, piercing the turmoil. "You must not only confront your fears but embrace them. Let them wash over you." Nothing in their lives had prepared them for such a moment. They had faced challenges, breakups, losses, the crushing weight of expectations, but this was different. This was raw, personal. The darkness wasn't just a surrounding force. It was also a reflection of their deepest insecurities, the truth they kept at bay. "What if we blink? What if our truths aren't enough?" Sarah gasped, a quiver in her voice. The shadows seemed to pulse at her words, reminding them of their fears. Margaret felt the warmth of determination flicker within her. What if we could turn that fear into power? What if our scars could guide us? Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, releasing Lily's hand. The moment felt surreal, every heartbeat echoed against the chaotic backdrop, urging her on. The shadows hissed, swirling closer, and for the first time, they felt almost tangible, like manifestations of the corrosive thoughts that had haunted them for years. "I'm afraid of failing," Margaret said, her voice steady yet vulnerable. "I've spent too much time worrying about what everyone thinks, about being perfect. But here, I choose to embrace my failures. They make me who I am." The beings brightened at her words. They seemed to shimmer, the light refracting into dazzling colors that cut through the dark. The shadows recoiled for a split second, as if her admission had struck a blow. "Margaret," James shouted, stepping forward as he found his own courage. "I fear I'm never enough. But that's a shadow whispering lies. I own my story, scars and all. We rise by sharing, not hiding." His words ignited a spark in Sarah, emboldening her to speak. "I'm scared of love. I push people away because intimacy terrifies me. But I won't let fear rule me anymore. I choose connection." As they shared, a warmth rolled through the group, an invisible force knitting their confessions together. Each admission transformed into glowing threads, forming a tapestry of light. The shadows recoiled, but not without a vengeance. The tempest roared once more, and the beings wrapped tighter around the group, shielding them from the dark fury outside. But something was off. As the shadows thrashed, they began to morph into distorted figures, reflecting the insecurities, the vulnerability they had just shed. Margaret's stomach twisted. Were these distorted forms the very fears they had faced? Lily cried out, "No. This isn't what we wanted. We've faced our truths." The shadows twisted into grotesque versions of themselves, elongated faces twisted in mockery of their admissions. Margaret felt an icy grip of panic. "What if it's not enough?" she shouted, terror spiking through her eye in that moment. The melodic voice reverberated through the chaos. You must act with intent. Do not simply reveal, but release. Offer your truths as a sacrifice against the darkness. With a sudden jolt of clarity, Margaret yelled, "We will not surrender. We will not be afraid." The group shouted in unison, pouring their collective strength into the air. The shadows writhed, their twisted forms beginning to collapse in on themselves, but the tension hung heavy. Would their united stand be enough to dispel the darker remnants of their fears? The colors from their truths burst outward, but the shadows retaliated in uncanny violence, dark tendrils striking dangerously close. Would they rise above the depths of their own darkness? With one final surge of energy, they pushed forward, eyes locked, hands clasped, resolved to transcend the chaos. Yet as the shadows began to dissolve, an icy laugh echoed, larger and darker than before. "This is only the beginning," it sneered. "You've only unlocked the door to the true abyss." The shimmering light flickered as they plunged deeper into uncertainty. What lay beyond that door? Would unearthing their truths guide them to salvation, or lead them right back into the depths of despair? The world around them shifted. The ground quaked beneath their feet, and the air thickened with an electric charge. As the last remnants of the shadows dissipated, the once vibrant light dimmed, leaving a chilling void. Margaret staggered backward, feeling the very foundations of her being tremble. What had they awakened? What did that thing mean? James whispered, his voice barely a breath against the oppressive silence surrounding them. The radiant beings were no longer present, their warmth replaced by a creeping dread that settled deep in the pit of her stomach. Lily shivered, eyes darting to the dark corners of the expanse that had become their battleground. "We may have done something irreversible. I can feel it. It's not just our fears anymore." The shadows hadn't vanished completely. They lingered, swirling like a sinister mist, weaving themselves into the fabric of their surroundings. It felt as though the universe itself was holding its breath, awaiting their next move. "I can still hear it," Sarah said, shaking her head vehemently as panic edged into her voice. "That laugh, it's echoing in my mind." The laughter was disorienting, mocking their very essence. It recycled their fears, morphing them into whispers that taunted them. "You think you hold power? You think your truths can save you?" The shadows seemed to respond, twisting in intricate patterns that beckoned them closer. "No," Margaret shouted, frustration mingling with terror. "We can't let this defeat us. We came this far. We faced our fears." But deep down, an unsettling doubt festered. Had their truths only momentarily brightened the darkness? Would digging deeper only loosen the grip of those merciless phantoms? "Look," James called, pointing to a pulsating doorway that now loomed before them, shimmering with an otherworldly glow. It was an opening, an invitation into the unknown that radiated both light and shadow. "Is this the abyss?" Sarah's voice was trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. "Should we go in?" "We don't have a choice," Margaret replied, resolve creeping into her words. "If we stay here, we become one with these shadows. We either confront whatever lies ahead, or let these darkness consume us." With a collective nod, they advanced toward the doorway, fear intertwining with determination. Every step felt heavy, like wading through quicksand. Just as they reached the threshold, a sudden chill washed over them. It was as if the deep void in front of them was breathing, deeper and more resonant than their own pulses. "Embrace it." The melodic voice erupted again, though this time rougher, more desperate. "You are on the brink of transformation. Let your truths guide you into the light." With hearts pounding and hands clasping more tightly than ever, they crossed the threshold together. In an instant, they were engulfed in a blinding light. But within that brilliance came visions, swirling emotions, and fragments of memories resurfacing with haunting clarity. Margaret saw her past mistakes unraveling before her, the faces of loved ones begging for understanding. James encountered a version of himself drowning in his fears, while Sarah struggled against shackles forged from self-doubt and shame. "Fight back," Margaret shouted into the chaos, but her words were nearly lost amidst the cacophony of their inner turmoil. A shadowed figure emerged from the brilliance, cloaked in darkness, yet somehow familiar. "Your journey does not end here," it rasped, voice slithering like a serpent. "You must decide what is truly worth fighting for." Only then will you unlock the key to your freedom. Frozen, they stared as the figure's haunting features twisted into something both alluring and terrifying. They felt their hearts beat in their throats. Could they really face this? Who are you? Lily managed to whisper, her voice trembling with dread. The figure leaned closer, shadows swirling like liquid night. I am your truth, your raw, unfiltered essence. I am what you fear most. Just as clarity appeared to dawn, the darkness surged, threatening to engulf them all over again. Fight! Don't let it pull you under. Margaret screamed. But what awaited them in this new confrontation remained uncertain, as the shadows pulsed around their feet, drowning out their resolve. What choices would they make in the face of true vulnerability? Would they find the strength to confront what lurked within, or would they succumb to the abyss, forever chasing shadows? The world around them faded into a shuddering darkness, pulsating with their collective fear. The shadows had coiled tighter than before, writhing like living beings determined to reclaim what they had lost. Margaret's heart raced, fear sparking in her chest like a flame flickering against the wind. They had come so far, faced down their fears together, yet here they were, teetering on the edge of an abyss. Keep moving, James urged, his voice cut through the thick silence. We have to break through this. Lily gripped Margaret's hand tighter, her fingers trembling. We can't let it win. Remember what we've learned. Our truths are stronger than these shadows. In that moment, Margaret felt a surge of defiance ignite within her. We fight together, she shouted, her voice lifting higher with each declaration. We refuse to let our fears define us. The shadows twisted, shrieking in response, their voices rising in a cacophony of despair mixed with anger. You think you are free? You are chained by your own truths. They will always haunt you. But their words only fueled their resolve. No, Sarah yelled, taking a step forward, eyes blazing. We acknowledge our fears, but we refuse to let them control us. The figures cloaked in darkness shivered, hesitating before rushing toward them like a storm. Margaret raised her voice, turning to her friends. We are not alone. We are bound together by our choices, and we stand strong. A wave surged between them, an undeniable connection woven through friendship, pain, and hope. Their energy melded, sparking like fireworks in the night. The shadows hesitated again, shimmering in uncertainty. With newfound confidence, they all stepped forward together, their hands clasped, wills entwined. We are not defined by what we fear, but by how we face it, Margaret proclaimed, her heart pounding. Using our voices, we reclaim our power. The storm of shadows surged toward them, but Margaret felt the energy radiating from their connected hands. It was bright and warm, enveloping them in a protective glow. Together we uncover the light, she shouted, feeling every ounce of fear wash away, replaced by an inner strength she didn't know she had. With one final surge, they let loose a chorus of truths, each confession a burst of color that swirled through the dark. I am enough, James shouted, his voice ringing out. I will not hide. I choose love, Sarah cried, her heart igniting. I am worthy of connection. I embrace my failures. Lily's voice chimed in, fierce and proud. I will not be afraid. As they spoke, banding together in raw honesty, the shadows recoiled, their forms twisting in pain as if burned by the radiant light of their unity. The air filled with brilliance, each affirmation striking at the heart of the darkness, unraveling its tight grip around them. Enough, the cloaked figure cried, the shadows quaking in response. You cannot fight what is inside you. Watch us, Margaret declared, locking eyes with the figure, defiance radiating from her very being. We redefine our truths. The shadows shrieked, retreating as the collective glow of their combined truths burst forth, illuminating the darkness like a sunrise breaking a long night. Suddenly, the oppressive weight eclipsed by that light began to lift. The swirling shadows started to flicker, disappearing into the radiance of their courage. They felt a pull, drawing them closer to unity, to clarity, to freedom. And as darkness receded, the blinding light solidified into a path laid before them. This way, Margaret urged, recognizing the shimmering doorway a gateway to their rebirth. With one final leap of faith, they surged forward, hearts beating synchronically, feeling the thrill of liberation wash over them like a tidal wave. The shadows gasped behind them as they crossed the threshold, stepping into a realm filled with warmth and endless possibilities. The air was fragrant with blooming flowers, the laughter of children danced like music around them, and the vibrant colors of life exploded like fireworks in the twilight. Their burdens had been transformed. Together, they stood at the cusp of a new beginning, hearts intertwined, knowing they were the architects of their own destiny. No longer were they plagued by shadows, they had embraced their truths, had faced their fears, and lived to tell the tale. "Look at where we are," Lily exclaimed, grinning wide, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. "We made it." "Together," Margaret added softly, beaming at the faces of her friends, knowing full well they had rewritten their own narratives, clutching the brilliance of life tightly within their grasp. The melding of laughter filled the air, a sonorous celebration of their triumph over darkness. A journey once shrouded in fear, now opened to endless light. And as they walked hand in hand into the vast horizon, they felt the whispers of the night fade away, replaced by a resonant promise of grace, wisdom, and new adventures waiting just beyond the dawn. And with that, they stepped forward, united, ready to embrace every new dawn. This is the moment of choice. Now, if you've been moved by this story, you need to subscribe right away. Don't let this end here. Smash that like button to fuel our journey together. Let your voice be heard in the comments section. Share your reactions and theories about this ending. And please, don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to experience this journey of hope and resilience.